So before we begin this video, I want to first thank everyone that have sent their condolence toward me and my family in terms of what happened last week, where unfortunately my dad sadly passed away from cancer. And there's no doubt that this week has been the toughest week of my life, and that the grieving process this week has not been easy whatsoever, and that I've also have been pretty much shut down all my attention toward YouTube and also my social media page to kind of help me go through this grieving process without all the distraction that has gone my way. And although I am at that stage where I am close to at the grieving process of acceptance that it is what it is, and that now my dad can pass away peacefully in heaven, and he doesn't have to deal with any pain that he's been suffering for the past couple of days before his passing. This is going to be a thing that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. And, it's unfortunate that that is the case, but, I'm ready to accept the challenge that, I'm going to remember him forever, and that, all now I have to do is just kind of remember all the good memories that I have with my dad and just kind of move on from that stage. But like I said, I want to thank everybody that have sent their condolence. I mean, the message that's been sent on my YouTube channel has been much more than I anticipated. And again, I want to thank everybody on that process. But I feel like now it is a perfect time for me to kind of do what I always been like to do, which is talk about MLS, do groundhops and all kinds of stuff. And in this first video, since my dad's passing, we're going to talk about all the news that I have missed in this past week. And that despite the fact that I was in that grieving process for the past week, I have not missed any MLS action, and that I actually still watch a lot of MLS game, and those kind of games actually really help in terms of the grieving being process. I mean, there's no saying that football is something that it can be used to kind of distract in terms of all the hardship that's going on. And I definitely take that cliche seriously this week, where watching these MLS game, and even if some of these games are not the team that I support, it really brings me a smile to my face watching this game. And especially also keep an eye on some of the very important news that has happened in the last week. And that's the first news we're going to talk about, which is this last week. The biggest news that came out of MLS is Gabriel Heinze has been fired by Atlanta United. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys have probably already heard what happened and why exactly Gabriel Heinze got fired, and I'll probably do a video similar to what I did with Chris Armas. I'll talk about what went wrong with Chris Armas' time at Toronto that got himself fired from the team that quick into the season. But, just to kind of quickly summarize why exactly Atlanta decided to fire Gabriel Heinze, well, it's a combination of things. It's not just the fact that this team is now in a 9-game winless run, and that this is the longest winless run that Atlanta has ever had ever since they came into the league, but also the fact that there was that disagreement between Gabriel Heinze and Joseph Martinez, and how there was a falling out between both of them, and that Heinze even said that I'm basically going to force Joseph Martinez to train by himself because I'm basically taking a stand where it's really my way or the highway, and it seems like Joseph Martinez is taking the highway, and that's of course is what it is. And also the other thing that I've also heard that led to the fire of Gabriel Heinze is that there's been multiple times the MLSPA has been kind of giving Gabriel Heinze a couple of citation and a couple of warning, talking about his brutal training method, and that we have heard about how he wasn't able to allow the players to even drink water during training session, and that basically brought a lot of memes on the Reddit page on Monday talking about that specific kind of thing. But when you have all those kind of bad things that has hanging the heads of Gabriel Heinze, you knew that he was kind of a dead man walking, and that it's unsurprising that eventually the Atlanta front office had to do something, and they eventually took the axe. And yeah, now we're gonna see how Atlanta United, what they're going to do in the future, and who exactly is they're gonna hire their next head coach, because I'm pretty sure heading into this season, this was not part of the plan, where just 11 games into the season, well, actually now 13 games into the season, that part of their process of returning to becoming one of the team that is a contender in the Eastern Conference, involving them have to fire a head coach this early into the season. But moving on, in terms of the next news, is that the U.S. Open Cup will return in 2022, as the U.S. Soccer Federation have announced that they have set up the U.S. Open Cup format. And I believe back in 2020, before the U.S. Open Cup was canceled because of the you-know-what pandemic happened, the U.S. Open Cup actually announced a new format that they're going to use, where, you know how when MLS team usually enter the fourth round of the U.S. Open Cup, well, some of them are actually going to be now entering the third round, and that's going to be the case in 2022, where, you know, they not only announced that the first round is expected to happen in March 22nd to the 23rd, and also I heard that they have announced the qualifying round for the U.S. Open Cup, which will be taking place at the usual time of September, October, and November. But they also have stick with the format that they were planning to use in 2020, which is MLS team will, or some of these MLS team will not just enter into the fourth round, but some of them might actually enter earlier into the third round. Now, I have no idea who exactly those MLS team is going to be, but I'm assuming most likely these MLS team might enter the early rounds, might be teams that did not make it to the playoffs last season, and that this is kind of like a punishment for these teams that, you know, if you didn't make it to the playoffs, then you basically get punished by having an extra game, and you have to play against a lower league opposition. But that being said, I do like the idea, the fact that MLS teams are entering in the earlier round, because, you know, I always love to see a matchup between a lower league team against an MLS team. Heck, even if there's a USL Championship team face against a MLS team in the US Open Cup, that really kind of draws me the attention, because, you know, there is definitely a chance that you could definitely see an upset and see these USL Championship side beat these MLS team, and we've seen it before that it has happened. So now we could potentially see it happen more often, knowing the fact that MLS team is going to entering in the US Open Cup a little bit earlier than what we used to have in this competition. Now, speaking of domestic competition, the Canadian Championship has been announced that it will be taking place in August and also in September. It also was announced that the Vancouver Whitecaps will actually enter the preliminary round, and that I believe they're going to be playing against Pacific FC team in the Canadian Premier League, while Toronto and Montreal will be entering into the quarterfinal. And again, I think this is the reason why the Whitecaps are entering early in the Canadian Championship, is because they have not been able to get far enough in the Canadian Championship to be able to earn an extra week of, or extra bye week. And that, you know, this is what happened when you do lose to Calgary a couple years ago, where if you get embarrassed by Canadian Championship or get embarrassed by Canadian Premier League side, you basically going to get punished by playing another Canadian Premier League side. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if the Whitecaps can basically make amends of it, as they're going to be playing against Pacific FC, and that's also kind of a little bit of a derby match too, because Pacific FC actually plays in I know they play in the Vancouver Island, and they don't actually play in Victoria, but it's somewhere around there that they of course play. So there's going to be kind of a little bit of a rivalry and kind of a derby kind of matchup, where you're going to have two Canadian teams that are from the same region, and they're going to be playing in this Canadian Championship match. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, and now talking about some transfer rumors and signings. And by the way, this past week, we actually had a couple of MLS players that has kind of officially announced that they are going to be going to Europe and sign with a couple of these European clubs. But before that, we had a couple of players that also have received multi-year contract extension. And those players are Rubio Rubin, Andre Blake, and Efrain Alvarez, all received multi-year contract extension for their respective club. And as always, you know, whenever I hear teams offer their players to receive multi-year contract extension, most of the time it's definitely worthy of them to get it, and that is the case for all three of these players that definitely truly earned their contract extension with the performance that they've been putting in so far this season. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and I also talked about how I was going to go to talk about players that is going to be going to Europe at the end of the season. Well, before that, I do have some bad news if you are a TFC fan, and that is Ayo Aquino is done for the season after suffering a torn ACL in that Gold Cup game against the U.S. That Canada, of course, faced. And, not only the fact that that's a huge blow for the Canadian national team moving forward in the knockout round of the Gold Cup, but it's a huge blow for TFC too. And, I'm pretty sure they're really hoping that Jozy Altidore will be the guy that is able to step up and score the goals for them. And so far, ever since he's been able to get back to the team after he basically was basically exiled by Chris Armas, he already scored a goal for TFC so far ever since he's been exiled. So, maybe he can definitely take the goal scoring kind of form that Ayo Aquino, I wouldn't say he has been doing well this season. I mean, no doubt, I think Aquinola is kind of suffering from a bit of a sophomore slump after last year of how he had a breakout year with the team. This year, he hasn't really discovered that form, but, still, it is a big loss for TFC because he is a guy that week in and week out starts in that number 9 position for the team, and now they're going to really hope that Jozy Altidore can continue that score form that he already had against Orlando City just a couple of days ago. But now moving on, finally, to talk about players that is going to be going to or talk about MLS player that is going to be going to Europe. First of all, we got FC Dallas midfielder Tanner Testman has officially signed with Valencia FC in Syria. Valencia FC, of course, is a newly promoted team, and that, I wish Tanner Testman the best, and especially the fact that he's actually going to go to not only a good club in Syria, but also a great city too. I mean, he gets to stay in Venice. I mean, that's probably one of the best city to live with, in my opinion. So yeah, that he does get the extra bonus, of course, but obviously what he is focusing is that he hoped to break out with the team, and maybe he can potentially earn a bigger move heading to Europe, because usually when we see MLS player, when they do make their move to Europe, usually it's not to a team that it is well known. I mean, unless you're a player that is definitely breaking out in MLS, or in the case if you're Daryl DK, you're probably not going to get a move to like some of these big clubs like PSG or Bayern Munich, and you usually go to these lesser known team in Syria. But we'll see whether or not if Tanner Testman can do well with Valencia FC, and potentially he could maybe get a bigger move off to somewhere in Europe if he does break through with the team. Now, Orlando City forward Chris Mueller has officially signed a pre-contract with Hibernian FC in the Scottish Premiership. Now, this was kind of a move that just kind of came out of nowhere, because unlike how we have heard that there was rumor that Tanner Testman was going to go to Valencia FC, we actually have not heard anything about Chris Mueller potentially going to Europe. I mean, we kind of knew that eventually he was going to make the jump to Europe. We didn't think that it was going to be this certain, and the fact that, now he has decided that he is going to make the jump to Europe. And I think part of that has to do with his contract is actually ending this year with Orlando City, and I thought maybe, with the way that he feels like this is the right time for him to make the jump to Europe with his contract being not being extended, but about to end. That's why he decided to make the jump to Europe right now. Although I will say this, going to Hibernian FC is a team that, they're not really considered a powerhouse in the Scottish Premiership, and that I know there's going to be some that say that this might be kind of a step down for Chris Mueller from going to one of the best team in MLS to go into a team that is like a mid-table team in the Scottish Premiership. As I mentioned before, a lot of these MLS players, when they make the jump to Europe, unless you are a player that has really light up MLS, or in the case of Daryl DK, you probably are not going to get a big money move to Europe to a well-known team. So we'll see whether or not if Chris Mueller does well with Hibernian FC, and if he does well with that team, I think he's going to get a bigger move to somewhere else in Europe, and we'll see if that, of course, is the case. Now, the Colorado Rapids defender Sam Vines have also also announced that he is going to potentially be leaving the Rapids this offseason to go to Europe. And although this hasn't been official, it has been reported that he is set to finalize a transfer to Royal Antwerp in Belgium. And again, it's a team that is not really well known in the Belgium league. I believe they play in the first division, but they're not kind of a team that, if you think about the Belgium league, I don't think Royal Antwerp is one of the team that you probably know that plays in that division. But again, this is just a move where Sam Vines gets a chance to kind of dip his feet into Europe and see if he can perform well with that club. And if he does, then he could potentially go get a bigger move to Europe and go to a more well-known kind of side. Now, moving on away from talk about MLS player that is going to be going to Europe to talk about a transfer report. And this week there was actually only one rumors that has happened, despite the fact that it kind of felt like there was a lot of transfer for rumors that has happened. But there actually is one report suggesting that the Seattle Sounders potentially is pursuing Palmeiras winger Wesley, and that they're actually paying a hefty amount of money to get him. Last report it was around $6 million, but Palmeiras basically said that that's not enough. They rejected the $6 million bid from the Sounders for winger Wesley. And from what I heard from this kid, he's a relatively young Brazilian kid, and he's definitely a kid that has some potential, but he also is a kid that doesn't regularly play for Palmeiras, and he's kind of more like a utility player for this Brazilian powerhouse team. And when you pay $6 million for a guy like that, there's definitely some risk in terms of surrounding that. But again, this is not unusual to see a lot of these MLS team, and how ever since Atlanta United started this kind of revolution of a lot of teams going down to South America and find some hidden gems. We will see more and more teams decide to do so, and the Sounders are kind of a team that is not a unfamiliar kind of team in terms of going down to South America and finding some hidden gem. In fact, they're actually one of the team that does the best. I mean, when you look at some of these South America imports that they got, guys like João Paulo, Raul Ruidiaz, and all these players that turns out to be just amazing players for this Sounders team. I won't be surprised if they do sign this guy, and he can definitely be a big name player coming in to MLS. But that being said, it'll be very interesting to see whether or not if the Sounders are going to think about paying $7 and $8 million. And I know right now the Sounders are decimated by injury, and they're definitely looking to trying to find some depth in terms of this team. But is it worth of them to try to get some depth and they have to break the bank in terms of able to do so? I don't know. We'll see whether or not if they are elected to continue this pursuit, or they decide to feel like maybe this is just way too much money to get just a depth player, and we'll just move on from this. Now, the Columbus Crew has announced that they are set to play Cruz Azul in the Campeones Cup on September 29th at Lower.com Field, and I think this is again one of the latest time that the Campeones Cup has been take place. But also, if we weren't in this so-called pandemic that was going on, and if the season didn't actually push back a month, then the usual time that the MLS season begins, then this Campeones Cup actually plays right around the same time it is the case, because if the season didn't push back a month late, then this would have taken place in August, which that's where the Campeones Cup has usually take place. And it's also kind of the same case when you also look at the MLS All-Star Game and also the League Cup, where the League Cup has been moved back to August, and before it was of course being in July. But if you consider if the season didn't start a month late, then we would also be around the same time. And it's the same case with the All-Star Game. It's going to happen near the end of August. If the season didn't start a month late, then it will be at the usual time of late July. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Columbus, of course, will do against Cruz Azul. And I'm pretty sure they're hoping that they're going to get a lot of their player back from the IR list and ready to take on a Liga MX he's powerhouse team, because they really need to have all those players healthy to take on Cruz Azul, which is a team that it will be very interesting to see how they're going to do this season in Liga MX, but I have a feeling they're probably going to be doing very well this season, and that this is not going to be an easy task for Columbus to able to take down a team that is Cruz Azul in Liga MX. But finally, the last news in terms of the news of the week is not actually the power rankings. I was thinking about putting the power rankings here on the news of the week, but then I just realized that yesterday we had pretty much almost every single MLS team play in terms of the midweek action, and it feels like that power rankings is kind of irrelevant now that every team has played. Well, almost every team has played in MLS, and that I might as well just kind of leave it there and just wait for the next power rankings, and then resume my usual kind of power rankings to talk about which team is actually in the top 10s at the end of the news of the week episode. But for the last news, we're going to talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps, who is going to return to Vancouver, not to actually play home games, but instead actually going to be training in Vancouver right now. And it's kind of interesting to see that they are going to be returning to their home market, and they're only returning there to do some team training in their facility rather than the fact that they just stay in Salt Lake City and continue to play game at Rio Tinto Stadium, because there is still no announcement of when exactly the Whitecaps are going to be returning to BC Place. And for those wondering why exactly it's taking this long for the Whitecaps to return to BC Place, and that the other Canadian team, that is TFC and Montreal, has already returned to their home market. Well, I heard that there was some renovation that was going on in BC Place, and therefore that's why it's taking a little bit longer for the Whitecaps to return to their home stadium. But again, what I'm kind of interesting and kind of in some way confused about this is that, well, you're still going to be playing your home games at Rio Tinto Stadium, but you're basically training in Vancouver. And although the flight from Vancouver to Salt Lake City isn't actually that long, it still kind of looks like a logistic kind of nightmare. It's kind of a bit of a hassle, the fact that, I mean, I understand that they want to return to Vancouver, and I talk about how these Canadian teams, they're desperate in terms of trying to return to their home market and not have to play in a city that they're not familiar with, and I know the challenge that he has come, but still, it's kind of weird the fact that, they're returning there only for training, and that they know for at least these next couple of matches, they're still going to have to fly to Salt Lake City to play a game in Rio Tinto Stadium, and then have to, of course, fly back to Vancouver for training. And again, it just feels like it's a little bit of a logistic nightmare. But that being said, I feel like the reason why they're doing this is because they really do miss their home market, and they're desperate in terms of having their team returning to the home market. And that these players, I'm pretty sure they're also so desperate in terms of returning to Canada, because a lot of the players from this Whitecaps team is from Canada, and they have definitely missed their family, and they're very happy that they are able to return to their home market and actually see their family for once, instead of actually seeing them on Zoom or even on FaceTime while they were down in Salt Lake City all this time. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news? And as always, if there's any news I didn't miss, let me know in the comments below. Later tonight, I am going to be doing the review in terms of the 2 games that is going to be happening today. I was actually thinking about doing the preview in terms of the 2 games that's going to be happening tonight, which I believe tonight it's going to be Orlando City versus the Philadelphia Union, and then it's the Seattle Sounders versus Austin FC. But then I thought, you know what? Might as well just kind of do a review on that game, because, for me, the only thing I'll say about those games is the fact that, the game between Orlando City against the Union, that should be a very interesting matchup in the top part of the Eastern Conference, where when you look at the Eastern Conference table, it is now back to that logjam kind of stage where I believe the standings between 2nd through 7 is only separated by 3 points. And then, of course, the other match between Austin FC versus the Seattle Sounders. The Sounders, we know what happened. Then on Sunday, they unfortunately have their unbeaten run came to an end in the hands of Minnesota United. And although they're looking to try to bounce back to get back to winning ways, it's not going to be easy, knowing the fact that they are still decimated with injury, and they're playing against an Austin FC side that I'm pretty sure Austin FC, seeing the fact that that you know, this is going to be a relatively weak Sounders team, and you could maybe say it's kind of like a Sounders 2 kind of team. They're desperate in terms of trying to get a win in that game and get themselves back on track, and also give their fans something to cheer about, which is something that their fans haven't had a lot to cheer about their new expansion team, with the way that Austin FC, like many expansion team, hasn't really got off to a great start in their expansion year. But yeah, there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.